of financial resources expended on national security is where 75% of our national security problem.
The organization has. So we're talking about how the board behaves, or in some cases, how they misbehave, because that also happens, rather than the tax they give.
Very rare you run into that I know.
I tell you, I've secured the name and content. I welcome our professional accountants, students, and other stakeholders to this episode of ICAN on Air. Sorry for the initial hitch. And today, we examine the Fiscal Responsibility Act, its implementation, and challenges. This is the Institute of Chartered Accountants' deliberate shaking the table, as it were. And as we always say, in popular parlance. And indeed, as Nigeria prepares for 2023 general elections, the tendency for responsible agents of the government is to shift focus from governance to politics. Real possibility. And currently, the political tempo of selecting candidates has taken over the discourse. Little attention is being paid to the implementation of the 2022 budget and the state of the economy. Charles Abana Esquire, LLB, MILD, FCIPDM, joins us in our question and answer segment to help redirect attention and understanding of this subject. He joined the Fiscal Responsibility Commission as one of his pioneer staff. He has risen through the ranks to the present position of Deputy Director and Head of the Directorate of Legal Investigation and Enforcement at the Fiscal Responsibility Commission. He is an inducted fellow of the Chartered Institute of Public Diplomacy and Management. He will be fully unveiled to us here very soon. Also, in this segment of the program, we share with you, as we always do, our ICAN diary of events, of important tidbits in our to-do for the benefit of our publics, some adverts, some announcements. So please stay connected. We shall be back with you very shortly. Please join me to welcome Charles Abana to ICAN on Air. Charles, you are welcome.
Thank you very much. I'm glad to be here. And I want to bring you compliments and best wishes from the chairman of the Fiscal Responsibility Commission, Victor Morocco, who has also granted me the permission to be here. He sends his best wishes, and thank you very much, Akin, for bringing me today on your wonderful program, ICAN on Air. I'm glad to be here.
I'm so very sure Mr. Morocco will be watching us right now. Wish him speedy recovery.
Yes.
Now,
it's getting better.
We go straight into the heart of the matter today, looking at Fiscal Responsibility Act, how its implementation and challenges have been. I like to frame it with the first two questions I'm going to throw at you so that our audience, students and practitioners can gain an understanding of where we are at about going on this navigation. How will you describe the term fiscal responsibility?
Thank you very much for that question. I'm sure your members, ICAN members, are very much at home with issues of finances and fiscal matters. But because students are also here, I'll make it brief. The word fiscal responsibility, has two important words in that phrase, if you like. There's the word fiscal, which of course generally refers to government or public funds or government money, if you like, treasury, the money in the public treasury, which can come in from taxes or revenues, those resources that are available for a government to spend in terms of either executing its budget or carrying out its obligations as a government for the benefit of those people. When you talk about issues that relate to the management of those resources, and that's what we refer to as fiscal, for the purpose of this discussion. And then, of course, responsibility, which is the other operating word in that phrase. I mean, I've been defined as being answerable to an obligation or a duty, that requires you to make your judgment, put your skill and your capacity or ability in making things work the way they should work. And that has to do, of course, with a duty put upon or a responsibility put upon an official of government, for instance, to act in a certain way, so that if all goes well, that official of government takes credit for it. And if all does not go well, unfortunately, then there should be sanctions or punishment for doing things the wrong way. In other words, somebody has to be responsible for the management of government funds. And then, of course, those government funds must be managed in a certain way that the law has permitted it to be done. So, generally speaking, or in summary, I should say, when we talk about fiscal responsibility in terms of the Act, the Fiscal Responsibility Act itself, it has a lot, it covers a lot, including, if you like, the medium-term expenditure framework that the law has said must be done before you talk about the national budget. You talk about fiscal policies and processes, including, of course, participation of people, general citizens, in determining what government priorities should be. Planning within medium-term expenditure framework all have come, to be part of our law as we have it, that is fiscal responsibility law, including, of course, issues about borrowing, about indebtedness, about deficit budgeting, and all those matters, which are very, very key in order to run your public finance system or manage it in a very efficient and effective way. All those are part of what we call fiscal responsibility. Let me just be a bit brief on that as we go along. I've explained before.
Oh, yes. Awesome. You remind me and the students of accountancy and professionals will always invariably talk about management accounting, the management to account for integrity and accuracy, which is our motto. And that goes without saying. So we now know what it is. All right. So what it is. But why? Why was the Fiscal Responsibility Act 2007 enacted, since we know what it is? Why was the act of 2007 enacted?
Okay. Prior to 2007, you would agree with me that we didn't have a law of its nature, of its kind. That is, if we had it, of course, we wouldn't be enacting another one. So what you could say we were operating in the absence of a law such as the Fiscal Responsibility Act 2007 is what have been described as a discretionary fiscal policy, in the sense that those who were in power, who were leading the country before now, I'm not just talking about this present political dispensation, talking about as far back as during the military regime when the soldiers were in power after a successful coup d'etat. You know that once they come onto power, they had their own policy. They did whatever they wanted. There was no National Assembly to control them. There was no authority, in quotes, that could limit how perhaps a head of state or a military administrator get to public finances. And so everything was at the discretion of whoever found themselves in control of the public treasury, if you like. And so things were done in a haphazard manner. Things were done, if you like, in an irresponsible manner. Let me just put it in that form. Now, with the advent of democracy and the fact that our economy was not in sound footing, if you know, there was a lot of problems with the economy. Macroeconomic stability was not there. Even with so many indices, the World Bank and the IMF took a study of Nigeria around 2005 or thereabout, and recommended that for our economy to be on a sound footing, we needed to have a law that would spell out how our public finances should be managed. You understand? And that was what led to the enactment of the Fiscal Responsibility Law in 2007. The law was signed by the late President Umaru Musa Yar'Adua in July 2007, and it became operational fully December 2008. And so the law has come to try to sanitize the process of our public finance management and to make sure that those wastefulness and corruption, if you like, all the undesirable things that we didn't want in our economy, in our country, we are taking care of. Most especially, it also came to enhance issues about transparency and accountability in the management of our public resources, to bring in efficiency in the conduct of our public fiscal affairs and even financial affairs, if you like. And there are so many new things that the law has brought into the system. It also introduced by law popular or citizens' participation in determining the country's strategic, economic, social, and developmental priorities. And you can find that in section 11 and 12 of the Act. Fiscal discipline was introduced through the Act. We must have a saving culture. These are things that every progressive economy of the world have already installed. There must also be prudence, especially elimination of wastefulness in the system, value for money in terms of expenditure, and of course, control of public debts. All these are the issues that this Act has come to put in place in our economy, to help our economy to be more stable and to grow, and to eliminate some of the things that in the past had been a drawback to our progress as a country.
Awesome. I imagine myself as a practitioner or somebody who believes I should go into a grove to go and get some spiritual cleansing. And part of the things that I'm told is that, there are certain things I should do, there are certain things I should not do, there are certain laws I should follow, and there are certain laws I should not follow. And that after that experience, I'll become much more wholesome. Okay. You told us the what? You've told us the value since 2007, 2007, when the Act came in. That will be some 10, 15, 16 years ago. And one expects that one will be counting the value. Yet, we had corruption then. There are many people who believe we have grand corruption last year, and we now have turbo corruption now. So what would you say has been the value of the acts? You know, what value has it added to the country's public finance management? Has it been static? Has it been regulatory? Are we moving forward? Are we much more cleansed? Or what would be your
Thank you
your way
very
of
much.
looking at how the public finance management of Nigeria has improved since 2007, for instance?
Okay. Thank you very much for that very, very insightful question. And you see, the challenge of changing the narrative in a country when it comes to the powerful headwinds of corruption, mismanagement, all manner of graft in the system is something that I doubt whether if we had maybe 200 more agencies, not just EFCC and ICPC and FRC, if we had to multiply to 200 or 2,000 more agencies, we'll be able to really tackle, to put an end to it. But the point still remains that the focus of the Fiscal Responsibility Act is to put in place certain mechanisms in the system that will prevent public officers having opportunity to corruptly enrich themselves or to, as it were, take advantage of the system. Now, we all agree that there are gaps, there are loopholes in the way things are being done, even before now and even up to now, that we need to change. I'll give you two examples to show you how trying to implement part of the provisions of the Act, the government has been proactive in minimizing. It's difficult to talk about total elimination, but I tell you, if there were no such system put in place, perhaps it would have become much worse than what we have. For instance, talk about the IPS system, the personnel payment system platform.
IPSS,
IPSS, yes. You know, in the past, that this issue of ghost workers and all manner of siphoning of funds from personnel salaries and some manipulation in that system has been reduced to a significant level through IPs. To the extent that some people are saying they don't even want to be in IPs. They are even fighting IPs. So that is something good is happening through IPs. If it were not so, people would have been rushing to enter if there was something they were to gain that is not appropriate. That's one aspect of it. Look at gift mix. I'm sure you know this terminology, so accountants. The system of paying for work done in the public service, and before you can pay a third party now, there is a lot of checks and balances. It's all put in a system. It's no longer manual. You don't talk about giving physical receipts. Talk about the Treasury TSA. These are some of the measures that government has put in place, pursuant to the provisions of this act, especially Section 48, that talks about transparency and accountability into the system. And then, if you look back, I tell you, I've been involved in certain programs or seminars where we had people sitting in the room. We have from local government, from state government, and I asked them, in the past 5 years, how many of you local government chairmen or local governments represented here have published your audited financial statement in the last 5 years? And only 2 hands out of more than 2,000 people in the hall, only 2 hands or 3 hands will see go up. So you can see that culture of being transparent and being accountable had not been there for a long time. And much as, yes, we are still battling to put all the right things in place, but we must start somewhere. Now, by the virtue of the provision of this act, it is no longer permissible for you to keep spending government money year in, year out without any form of accountability. Not even an AFS for crying out loud. And yet you keep telling me that you have a right to keep spending the money. And now there's even another aspect, the issue of transparency. The people must know. You must publish this account. You must make it open. Put it up on your website. Citizens must have access to know how much or how your money is being spent. Now, as we're speaking, the government of the day has a transparency policy. There's even a treasury portal in the office of the Accountant General Federation that is supposed to reveal to all Nigerians, anybody who goes there, every government transaction in excess of 5 million naira daily. They're supposed to upload it on those portals. Now, these are some of the steps that have been taken by government to try to reduce, those loopholes and prevent opportunity for people to enrich themselves or to take advantage of the system. Now it's still work in progress. As we go along, we keep identifying more loopholes and finding ways to utilize technology and all manner of things to block them, and also to make things transparent, because lack of transparency is the ecosystem that perfectly works, to make corruption to grow much in our country and any other place. So those are part of the things, and you can see part of another issue that's very dear to us as a Fiscal Responsibility Commission is the fact that there must be prudence in the management of our resources. Our resources are not enough. And even the use that we have to go, to take care of over 200 or so million people, it cannot be run without prudence. And that's why we keep insisting. There must be audited financial statements. And when we find incidents of the so-called creative accounting, we blow the whistle, we scream, we make it known, we call attention to it. Because if there is no accountability and there's no transparency system, we just keep running in circles, unfortunately. So that's part of the thing that the Act has come to put in place. And that's why we talk about a medium-term fiscal policy framework. If we're going to budget, let's not just budget for just 1 year and end it there. Let's have at least a 3-year rolling plan. So we can carry over certain things that we couldn't finish in 1 year and see how much, that we need to make allowance for the succeeding years. These are very, very important things that I've tried to at least put a sort of structure in the system that will help minimize some of these negative narratives and improve the outcomes that we have, through our budgets and the execution of budget for the benefit of Nigerians, year in, year out. So that's a part of it.
Thank you very much, Mr. Abana. This is a public discourse, not just for accountants. We also have non-accountants who are watching us. Yes. And you made use of the word that we have to plug the loopholes. It is either the holes have become a crater that is so difficult to plug, or that the language of we accountants, putting controls, putting discipline, even over control, should prevent the untoward from happening. And it's the reason why Luda Agoli is asking a question that I think is in the lips of everybody in Nigeria today, with Fiscal Commission in place. If that act is in place, if you've spent, it's been work in progress, like you said, the idea, why is it so easy, allegedly, for 80 billion to be missing at the Accountant's General Office? I say allegedly because I know the FCC is still investigating. There are questions here and there. And when there is smoke, there is most likely to be fire. Why is that? Why is that?
Thank you very much again. I like these questions because they are very germane and they are very much, contemporary, what is happening, by the second. Now, it's very interesting that we're talking about accountants here. And in the same office of Accountant General, we're talking about accountability. It's unfortunate that gatekeepers, are being accused of putting their hands in the till. There is old saying that say you should set a thief to catch a thief. I don't know whether you know that saying. In other words, you need to put people who understand the system of how a thief or a criminal can gain access to a place in order to steal, for them to be able to prevent a thief from gaining access. Because if you put an ignorant person who does not understand all the, secret access to that same place, he may not be able to prevent the thieves from gaining access. Now, the problem now is unfortunate that some of the people that we may have put as gatekeepers, especially the accountants, they know how the flow of money and resources go. Who else is in a better position to know how to move them out the wrong way, if not those who understand how they enter? I don't know whether they understand what I'm trying to say. So I think it is a big challenge, especially for institutions like ICAN, Institute of Chartered Accountants and ANAN and other accounting professional bodies, including my own MBA, the Nigeria Bar Association. A time has come when we must make sure that our colleagues who are professionals don't get away with certain unprofessional acts that leads to this kind of accusation, because it happens even with lawyers, unfortunately, or other professionals, if you like. So what the government is trying to block loopholes. The professional bodies themselves must hold their members to high ethical standards. I mentioned earlier the phenomenon of creative accounting, as we have experienced in the course of doing this job. I tell you, there have been incidents where professional accountants will put their signature on 3 different audited financial statements for one same entity. For instance, you will see one that reports a loss, that is operating loss, because part of the mandate we have under the Act is to monitor and enforce the remittances of operating surplus by certain government-owned enterprises that are listed in the Act and those that have been added. So you find situations where you have 3 different accounting statements for one particular entity. One is showing that they made a loss, so that they were not paying anything at all. The other is showing that they broke even. That's the one they sent probably to the Office of the Auditor General of the Federation. And the real one that actually shows what profit was made is kept for only the boards, for their consumption. Nobody sees that one. It is hidden inside. So in the course of our work, we don't have to compare what we have received from what was sent to the Office of Auditor General. You see a completely different, scenario. And these are things that are handled by professionals. They are the ones that help these agencies to try to cut corners and take advantage of the system the wrong way. So it is a continuing fight. As the EFCC is doing theirs and looking for whatever evidence they need, we need to also look inward amongst ourselves, among our members. Those who are found that have been unethical must be punished appropriately by the concerned professional bodies. That will also be very helpful in the fight to make our country better.
I dare say you dare say that again, Mr. Abana. Of course, like Wole Soyinka would have said, there are X and there are X. The Institute of Chartered Accountants of Nigeria holds a tough, very, very high, with a motto of integrity and accuracy. And the fact that being an egg, also some other egg, we need to be able to try and discern the real difference, including making sure that at the end of the day, erring or reported cases are disciplined effectively by the Institute. Perhaps I know Temi Tope Fagbola is still talking about this 80 billion naira missing from the National Treasury. I'm not necessarily wanting to say it will not be ICAN, but I also know that it cannot be ICAN, and you could go check that. She wants to know if there is a nexus between corporate governance and fiscal responsibility. Is there a no nexus? Are they complementary or are they separate?
Of course, they're complementary. There's always a nexus between good or sound corporate governance and fiscal responsibility. If you look at the Act itself and look at the functions of the Act, where it states the functions, you will see that part of it is to, carry out proper research and study in order to come up with international best practice, in terms of how to improve our public finance management, our revenue, our taxes, and all those things. And if you don't have a sound governing, management in place in any of the institutions or entities, you cannot achieve these things. And that is why we have always been willing to work with as many agencies, particularly those that are listed in the schedule to the Act, the Fiscal Responsibility Act, in order to look at their systems, especially the accounting system, because that's where the problem really starts from. If I'll give you one of those examples. I'm sorry I have to say this, but I mean, it's transparency is part of our work. We have had occasions in this country where we have engaged an entity as big as the Nigerian Immigration Service, and we have asked them, please let us see your audited financial statement. And they kept coming up with, we don't have any financial statement. And how can you be governing an entity as large as that and you tell us you don't have any? The best they can do sometimes is to send us a few, 1 or 2 pages from that they got from those they say have been in charge of making what do you call it, passport, international passport, printing international passports. But that's not what we're saying. It's not only them all. I'm just using that as an example because that happens severally, and I'm sure if you look at our annual reports, we must have reported on that. There are so many like that. How can you be governing an entity you don't understand or you don't want to understand the importance of being accountable for all the resources that you have? So we claim they have a PPP with certain external bodies. And for that reason, they don't want to make it. Let that be a separate account for the PPP operation, and then a separate account for your normal operation. You cannot mix the two and tell us that because there's a public-private partnership and you have other companies doing one thing or the other for you, therefore you don't feel there's any need for you to make an account or to render an account of the money that have come and the one that have left. And that is part of it. And these people have accountants working there. It's not just that we're just working there to make people who don't understand what we're talking about, who don't understand the obligations under the Act. They have accountants working there. And immigration services is listed in the center of the Act, and so on. And when we're saying, you can't just continue like this and keep telling us, this is how you were doing it before, this is how it was done before you came here, you have not seen any done like that. We don't accept it. So governance structure is very, very key. And part of the amendment we are asking the National Assembly to make to the present Fiscal Responsibility Act 2007 is to put a provision that once we find a continued refusal to publish an audited financial statement, or even showing that you are making losses, that whoever is at the governing board of such entities should be dissolved, and there should be a forensic investigation auditing of their activities. So there's no point telling them, renewing the tenure of a certain board when they have not been accountable for their tenure. So that's what we're even asking the National Assembly to put in the amendment. And for those who are doing well, there should be a way of appreciating them and recognizing they are doing well so that others can emulate. You see? So it's very, very key.
Yes, Mr. Abana, I keep on saying, rather than dilute, why don't you consolidate? I mean, since 1960, thereabout, when the Institute of Accountants came with its acts, and today we are swimming on the same old charter. We have new chapters, retraining ourselves to be aligned with what you are saying. But by the time you now put the hen and the bad hen all together, we call them professionals, is one of the things that we are seriously preaching against. A case in point will be the ICAN Council, President ICAN Council, visiting Mr. President, and to our delight, he came out and gave us a scorecard of saying that the discipline that we have always shown will stand us in good stead. And so is the preachment that we make. Hire professional chartered accountants from our institute, and we will deliver the devil. For instance, another point, yes.
The level.
Oh, yes, we deliver the devil because, this thing that we call corruption is hydra-headed. And if people
they said the devil is in the detail. So by delivering the devil, you will give all the details.
And that is where our accuracy mantra comes in. Okay.
Yes.
One of the questions we also ask is that the Act says we must spend responsibly. Put your quote according to your club. Abel Hussein is asking this question. The Act provides ceilings for borrowing for purposes for which loans can be taken by government. Is borrowing to pay subsidy justifiable or legal?
No. Of course, you and I know that borrowing to pay subsidy cannot be justifiable. But you see, it's quite unfortunate that we have found ourselves in this quagmire of borrowing, which was exactly what the Act set out to get us out of in the first place. And that was why, from the very beginning, it put in place measures when it comes to borrowing. And those conditions are clearly spelled out in Part 9 and Part 10. Now, looking at the conditions to start with, it's very, very clear that before the federal government or any government in the federation, as a matter of fact, I need to make the point here that when it comes to the issue of borrowing and deficit budgeting, the provisions of that act covers all the tiers of government. So there is no issue of the state government coming to say that they have a right, under any perceived fiscal federalism anywhere, to go on a tangent on its own, to go and borrow without complying with the express provisions stated in the Fiscal Responsibility Act 2007. That was very clear. The reason for that is that the issue of borrowing and indebtedness are all in the exclusive list in our constitution as of today, the 1999 constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria as amended. So those conditions must apply to every level of government, including, of course, for our own purpose, all the agencies of the federal government. There are big agencies that can go to borrow. Those agencies must also comply with the conditions. One, the borrowing must be for capital projects or for capital purposes, not for consumption or for recurrent, if you like. You understand? And of course, the borrowing must also be on concessional terms, not at any condition of any condition of percentage for paying back. And the law has described or defined a concessional term to be 3%. 3% interest, not at any rate of interest. You and I know that there's hardly any financial institution that can give you any loan at 3%. But what to do with the commission, trying to be reasonable in the circumstance, is to at least insist on a single-digit borrowing. If it's not 3, let it not be beyond 9. If it has to be beyond 9, let it definitely not be beyond 10, because that will be going out of the way. That's for now because of the situation of finance. But then the point is this: the law now says there are other things that have to be there. You must present a cost-benefit analysis of the reason why you must borrow. There must be approval by the relevant legislative authority. If it's a state government, the state assembly must not only approve it, it must be also in the budget for that year, that financial year. You don't just borrow outside your budget. If you must borrow next year, make sure it's in your budget for next year. Passed by the state assembly and approved. The same thing for the National Assembly. I know that there's always a borrowing plan that is included in the MTF that is approved before even the budget. So at national level, there seems to be some compliance with those details, in terms of planning. Now, the law also insists that whatever amount you borrow must be utilized for the purpose in which it was, received. You cannot borrow to do X project and divert it to Y project. It's not allowed. But then, most significantly for us as a commission is Section 45, especially Section 2, Section 45, that says that before any bank or financial institution should lend to any government or any agency of government, that they must obtain proof of compliance from the commission before going ahead to lend. And that failure to do this means that lending is illegal, unlawful. The word used by the law is unlawful. Now, that brings us to a scenario whereby it is very possible for the state government, for instance, maybe an administration now, to go ahead, flout all the conditions, do a deal with a bank, and take some money for loan, perhaps on the way out at the twilight of the current administration. And then maybe another person gets elected at the next election, comes into government, into power, and sees a file of loan taken, and then says, when did this one happen? Where are the conditions? When did the state assembly approve this? And nothing. The law has said that is an unlawful transaction. So very soon we will start getting cases in court where courts will be asked to declare certain loans taken by some state government as unlawful, and therefore no obligation to repay the banks. Because we have kept shouting, make sure before you lend to any of these states, come to us and ask us, as these people, let's see the document that they presented. Have they followed the right procedures as stated in the law? That's for borrowing. Now, come to deficit budgeting. Our law has said, Section 12, that it should not be in excess of 3% of GDP. In other words, your projected revenue plus 3% of our GDP should be the size of our budget, as a matter of fact. Once we go beyond that, we've already gone against the provisions of the law. Now, there have been amendments, incidentally, and that's something that is a bit worrisome to some of us. It is true that we are pressurized, the country is pressed for all manner of reasons to develop fast. The problems are so huge, but we must always remember to cut our coat according to our cloth. Now we have a revenue challenge. Our tax to revenue is so poor, less than 10%. I think it's about the worst in the whole of the West African region. We are not getting much through taxes. Even through the sale of crude oil, we're not even meeting up with our production quota. And so, yes, now the oil prices are a bit high, but then we're not really covering much ground on that side. And yet you have to repay almost 86% of our revenue is spent on debt servicing. Now you can see that we're in their state in terms of issue of deficit budgeting. So when we now say, for instance, that we are going to spend 4 trillion to service petroleum subsidy for June to December, that throws up a very huge challenge, I tell you. If 4 trillion is all that we have it to, in other words, if we must sources, we have to borrow. We already committed to borrowing nearly 7 trillion in the current budget. That has not even started being implemented. I'm sure you know that the government just announced, or the National Assembly just announced an extension of last year's budget by another 1 month. I think it was to end this month. So far, the 2022 budget, to the best of my knowledge, has not started being implemented. At least, it may be in some sectors they may have started implementing it, but not generally. So we can't even talk about getting a budget implementation report for the first quarter of this year as required under Section 30 of the Act. That may not come because we don't know how, whether it's going to be implemented. And now this 4 trillion is also there. The problem is this: there has been a constant, attempt or work towards opening the door for either more borrowing or more deficit instead of shortening it. We have had an amendment proposal before National Assembly since 2013. What has happened in the intervening years, especially 2020 till now, is that National Assembly, in their wisdom, have used the instrumentality of the Finance Act to amend some sections of the Fiscal Responsibility Act without considering the holistic amendment that we have brought before them. For instance, the Finance Act 2020 amended part of Section 12, where it talks about the 3% threshold, to permit the government to spend a deficit in excess of 3% in certain situations that were listed. It was expanded beyond just when the country is at war, to include when there is any outbreak of any health scare, even if it's a part of the country, and so on and so forth. So there was some amendment that seemed to water down the strict application of that 3% rule. That's on one side. Now, 2020 amendment again, I'm talking about section 12 of the Finance Act 2021, the one for last year, amended section 41 of our act, talking about the condition for borrowing. It says that the government cannot only borrow for capital expenditure and for human development now. They included a phrase which says that government can borrow to undertake critical reforms of a significant national impact. That phrase, or that, undertaking critical reforms of significant national impact, we had asked the National Assembly during the public hearing to include an interpretation, not to give room for an abuse of, borrowing under that phrase. And we made the point that you cannot be talking about borrowing that affects all the 3 tiers of government, including local government, and talking about national impact, critical reforms of significant national impact. How can a local government borrowing impact on the nation? Is it their duty to do anything that will impact on the whole country? And so if they now claim they want to borrow under taking critical reforms in their local government of significant national impact, I don't know how that can be logical.
Mr. Abada, will you therefore say this topsy-turvy, this gnawing by the sides of the Financial Responsibility Act, which has been watered down by some of the examples that you've given, has made your commission toothless bulldog? One. And then secondly, let me just add this. Because if you now put all that in a basket, it's obvious that our nation, the values of our nation seems geared towards corrupting the system and not being process driven, not being adequately governed. And then is there a reason why we are not where we are? So how do we cure this? I mean, how do you think we can cure this imperfection that goes on a regular basis, year in, year out?
I wish we could have just, complied with the provisions that are already in the law. If we had, those in leadership had the political will, as they say, or the willingness to simply comply with what laws we already have in place before they came into power, I think it would have been easier for everybody. For instance, Section 42 made it clear that the National Assembly, acting on the proposal of the President, who has received advice from the Minister of Finance, should set limits, consolidated debt limits for all the three tiers of government in the country. In other words, before now, we should have had a situation where a limit was set to say government cannot borrow beyond this limit, looking at the financial situation of all the subnational governments and so on. And as I speak to you, there have been several resolutions in the National Assembly when Mr. Femi Gbajabiamila, who is the current Speaker of the House of Representatives, when he was Majority Leader, I remember he, as Majority Leader at that time, sponsored a resolution, giving the government, that was in place at that time, I think it was Goodluck Jonathan or so, a mandate to come up with those debt limits for them to set. I'm aware of a High Court judge, Federal High Court Abuja, when an NGO went to court to get the Minister of the Attorney General, Minister of Finance, and the President, that they should set the limit. They came to, oppose the action, but the judge agreed with the plaintiffs and said those limits must be set because it's already a provision of the law. That's where we should start, because if the law is saying our commission should monitor whether any of the three tiers of government have exceeded the debt limit and no debt limit have been set, what are we going to monitor? So that is where we should start if we have the political will. So because we must understand that if part of the challenge that we have in our system, if we must tell ourselves the truth now, is that looking at our budgeting, the way we do our budgeting, it's not sustainable. It cannot work. When we have thousands of projects that the legislators put in there as constitutional projects that the executive did not even conceive, added to the ones the executives are coming with, you now have a basket that no amount of water you pour into the basket that will be staying in the basket. Everything will go into waste, unfortunately. If we just stick to our the revenue we can generate within a period of time, and then pick the projects that we can complete at least reasonably. We can't finish everything in a 4-year tenure or 8-year tenure. But let's do that within the available resources that we manage properly. We can say we were able to do A, B, and C. But trying to do everything at once, when you don't even have the money, you say you are going to borrow, you're not even sure you're going to get the money borrowed. I don't understand why we should control like that. So it's something that all Nigerians must be part of. Good, I think that Section 51 of the Act have said it's not only the Commission that should be interested in seeing that this law is respected or applied. It gives every citizen the right to approach a federal high court to get a prerogative order, either to compel an official of government to do the right thing or to prohibit them, to stop them from doing what is not right without having to show local standing or any special interest. So all NGOs, including ICAN, can help us in this journey.
Exactly, including situation that we have put on the table at the doorstep of policymakers, because we are practitioners of integrity, accuracy, and the ability to do. I guess this is the point. Everybody can play guitar. A song goes, then give the guitar but to somebody to play it and then be playing different tunes. But when it comes into the hand of the accountants, of professional accountants this time around, of people who have been trained and gone through the system, it will make a whole lot of difference. And because time is not our friend, Mr. Van, I think I will just want to have your final word on this matter, including how we professionals, because this is our stock in trade, this is what we are trained to do, and this is what you have the discipline to be able to do. What will be your last words on this subject?
Thank you very much. I'd like us to, as a country, everyone to be very, very active and not passive in demanding accountability from our government. ICAN, as an institution, as a professional body, is poised, strategically to help us in achieving that. And I call on every participant and especially members of the, of ICAN to please help in calling out those members who are not helping us in keeping, taking care of our resources. Somebody made an adage that when you send hyenas to take care of goats, you shouldn't come back the next day and be surprised that some of the goats are missing. Not everybody is a hyena, but we must identify the hyenas and take them out. Finally, I want to thank ICAN on Air program for a very wonderful initiative, especially the president of the institute, Mrs. Comfort Olu Eyitayo, MNI FCA, the president of ICAN. I wish we had a female president of MBA too one of these days. It's a good thing to have women who are doing great things for the country, leading a professional institute like ICAN. And it's been a wonderful time. We at the commission, on behalf of our chairman, we thank you for this opportunity. I also want to thank our anchor, Akin, for doing a fabulous job, very professionally, and making it a very interesting time out. I'm very grateful for this opportunity. Thank you very much for having me at today's episode.
We must not only thank you, Mr. Abana, we must also thank our online participants. And we do hope that our modest voices, I dare say, as professional accountants, either when we approach the National Assembly of Nigeria or the presidency or the state government, should know that they have low-hanging fruits in the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Nigeria who have trained, who are ready to put their services to the use and value of the nation, and who has controls in place to discipline erring members. For members who are not necessarily part of us, we are limited. That is the reason why, whether we are looking at forensic auditing, whether we are looking at taxation, whether we are looking, again, talking about the fact that the men and the boys are all hustling for the sake of country. Please listen to the voice that has been tested. That's the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Nigeria. I need to thank you, and I need to thank our online participants for their insightful questions. A question came, and I was talking about that. How do we call out? Yes, we have a disciplinary aspect to ICAN. We are reported, it's investigated thoroughly, fairly, squarely, and including the listing becomes part of what we have done. You need to come check how that goes. And this is not going to be the end of our story of ICAN on Air, because next Tuesday, March 19, 2022, we have another scintillating episode. The time will be 6 p.m. West African time, and to be on ICAN online social media platforms. The topic will be transfer pricing, dissecting the key issues. Transfer pricing, dissecting the key issues. Our guests will be Josh Bamfo, MA, PhD, He is partner and head of the transfer pricing services practice of Anderson in Nigeria, as well as the global co-leader for transfer pricing with responsibility for Africa and Middle East. Prior to commencing his transfer pricing career, Josh Bamfo was a visiting assistant professor of economics at his alma mater, the University of Delaware, USA. You don't want to miss this? You want to say something to somebody else to come along with you, to come and tap from this knowledge of value that the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Nigeria is giving to our public, giving to Nigeria. Let me drop my nugget for today. And it starts by a quote. A lack of transparency results in distrust and a deep sense of insecurity, end of quote. That is attributable to Dalai Lama. And as I always remind, you be the change you like to see. And so the sun sets on ICAN on Air program for today to resume and arise again on Tuesday, March 19, 2022. Don't miss it. Until then, I am Akin Fatunke, your anchor, ICAN on Air. Bye for now. The opportunity of financial resources extended on national grid. So we are 17 times at the end of our national security program.
The organization has. So we are talking about how the board behaves, or in some cases, how they misbehave, because that also happens, rather than the tax they give.
Very rare Yoruba names that I know.
I tell you, I've secured the name and